Welcome to another edition of Digging Deeper. Pastor Bradley Martin here, welcoming you to another episode of study on the book of John. I'd like to welcome you. If you're a first-time guest, we appreciate you stopping by. If you've been hanging in there with us for weeks, we appreciate that as well. Appreciate you sharing the word and sharing the feeds of these, the videos, the podcast, all those. I do appreciate you doing that. It is not for me about the numbers of people that are listening to that, although according to statistics, we are getting more and more listeners, so I do appreciate that. But I just want to tell you that I do appreciate you listening to us and for wanting to study a little bit deeper in the Word. And I know we can't go as deep as possible necessarily because we would get bogged down in some things, and we want to kind of move on to some other things. But that being said, this week, as I've tried to do a chapter a week, I want to slow down a little bit and do the first part of John 10, because we are moving now to the end of the gospel. And while John has several more chapters left, we are proceeding into what is known as Passion, the Passion Scriptures, Passion Week. We are moving that. If you're listening to us in real time, we started in the 1st of March. Easter is going to be around April. I think it's the first weekend of April. So we are on the cusp, the precipice of celebrating Easter. And so I wanted to dig in a little bit as the passages here are moving toward that, and try not to go so fast that we miss some of the details of what John is trying to share with us, and of course what the Holy Spirit in its authorship and its giving the ability to write this to John wants us to hear. So we're probably going to get through the first 21 verses of this week, and then we'll come back next week and pick up the remainder of chapter 10, depending upon how time goes here. We are, last week in chapter 9, if you were with us, and if you want to go back and listen to that, that was the story of where Jesus healed the blind man. And John used the metaphor that Jesus said, "I am the light of the world," and he compared darkness to light. Of course, that when you look at somebody who's blind, they're living in darkness. They can't see. Doesn't matter how bright the light is shining in front of them. They're in darkness. They can't see. And Jesus used that as he compared those who followed him and those who were listening to his teachings to those of the Pharisees that live in what they think is the light. They know the law, they know all this, but they're still living in spiritual darkness. And so this week he's going to use the metaphor of the shepherd. And it's one of the most famous metaphors. If you see paintings of Jesus, you're going to see him as a shepherd. Now, are all those totally accurate? Maybe that, but they're depending upon the inspiration of the painter or the drawer for whatever that person was illustrating at that moment in time. But let's just read this and see. "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep will follow him, and they know for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. We have this ability, we have this privilege to live on this side of the scriptures. And we have almost a couple thousand years of teaching and knowledge of exactly what this meant. And we take for granted sometimes that the people real time really didn't understand totally what he was talking about, because he was talking in a metaphorical language. He was illustrating a point by using some figurative language here, comparing himself to a shepherd, and comparing us to sheep. Now let's just look at sheep to start with. Sheep were a commonality. It was a business or career choice of some in the Middle East to take after sheep. They were not considered, the shepherds were not considered very high on the totem pole as far as culture goes. Sheep were usually really dirty, really nasty. They were outside. Of course, we're talking about a dry land where there's a lot of dust, and so they would get really dirty. If you've ever been around sheep, especially when they get all their wool in, they're thick, they're matted, they're just really just not clean animals if you want to look at them. And in combination with all that wool and then the dust and just being outside in the wilderness all the time, you can very well picture that they're not a very clean thing to be around. They're dirty. But Jesus often uses the illustration of sheep to us, to his people. And that is not necessarily a positive thing. Sheep are dirty. Sheep are also really just dumb. They're just not really smart animals. They need someone to guide them. They need a shepherd to guide them. That shepherd with his hook will keep them from going the wrong way. If sheep are left unattended, they will wander to places where they think they are supposed to be. They will try to go to where there's food, even though there may be danger there. They may fall off cliffs. They may fall into holes. They may be attacked by other dangerous animals, wolves, whatever is in the area. And so him comparing us to sheep is not it's not good. It's not a positive thing on our perspective. So when you see those nice little paintings of the shepherd with the sheep, those are not as accurate as they can be. So they were dirty, dumb, just stinky things to be around. But Jesus is also saying that he's comparing himself here as a shepherd, as one who enters. Well, first of all, he's going to compare himself by one who comes into the sheepfold by the door, and one who comes in another way, that is a thief and a robber. So you have someone who comes into the door that knows the access, that has access by the person that is in charge of the door, whether it's a shepherd or somebody that the shepherd is working with. So the person that comes in by the door, by the way they're supposed to, is compared here to somebody who is not, who's trying to sneak in. He's a robber. He's a thief. So he's coming to do damage. He's coming to do bad things to the sheep. So the gatekeeper is going to allow in the person that comes into the sheepfold or wherever the sheep are the right way. That person is going to let them in. The sheep hear his voice. That person that comes in the right way, it says he knows his own sheep by name. He leads them out. I read somewhere where, like, we name pets, we name dogs, cats, some people name horses, some people may name fish, whatever floats your boat, name it I don't have any problems with that. But in the Middle East, they would also name their sheep, and so you would know the sheep by their name. So they're it's I've often thought we have three dogs. We have two that are the same. One's a female, one's a male, and I've often wondered how people with multiple pets of the same um, kind, the same species. We have two boxers. Um, how they tell them apart, because when you see something that, or when you see these animals that you're not around, you're like, well, these dogs, they look exactly alike, or these cats, they look exactly alike. But to the owner who knows them and spends time with them, they know their name, they know their personality, they know how they look, they know the little bitty spots that are different. Um, that's not what a robber or a thief does. The thief is just coming in there to steal. He has no personality. He has no personal interest in this case, the sheep. He's just come there to do damage. But the one who keeps the sheep, the one who comes in by the door, he knows their name. The sheep know his voice. So when he calls them out, they know exactly that that's his name, and he can lead them out by just calling them. When he has brought all this out, he goes in front of them. The sheep will follow him, for they know his voice. They know that that shepherd is going to lead them into a place of safety. They've done this before. They're trusting in this person. Whereas a stranger, the sheep are not going to follow him. In fact, it says when they hear his voice, they're actually going to run away. They're going to flee because they do not know the voice of a stranger. So he's comparing, or he's juxtaposing here himself, and really when it boils down to, he's the opposite of him. And I heard this week, and so I don't want to say that Satan is the opposite of Jesus, because he's not. He's more anti. He is literally the Antichrist. He is the opposing, the antithesis, the opposition. To call him the opposite would put him on equality with God. So I'm trying not to use necessarily that phraseology. But Jesus is saying, I am the shepherd. I am the one that calls my sheep out by name. Those dumb animals, stinky animals, they know my name, and so they follow me. Whereas the one who is a thief and a robber, and of course he is referring to Satan, they do not know the voice of him, because they don't know the voice of strangers. So then in verse 7, he's going to change a little bit of the metaphor here, and he's going to change it from being the shepherd who is going to lead them and protect them, to now he's going to be the door. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. So he is now that gate. He is that access. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep do not listen to them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it more abundantly. So again, you're going to have Jesus comparing himself to one thing, and then you're going to have the antithesis or the anti of that in something else. So now he says that I am the door. When you go through a door, you have access to the room you're going into. So modern times, we live in houses with multiple doors, and so we kind of lose a little bit of that metaphor. But when a house only has one access point, the only way that you can get into a house is the door, one door. And anybody who tries to get in another way that does not have access to the door is coming as a thief and a robber. I think about school. So school has really multiple entry points, But throughout the day, there's only one way to get into the building when everything is closed up like it's supposed to be, and that is the front door. And if you come in by another way, you're an unwelcomed person. Um, you're a stranger. You can bring harm. You can do damage to that. So we have to keep our exterior doors secure. We can't we can't crack open doors, because crack open doors, that's how people get in that come to do harm. See, where I'm going with this is that Jesus says, I am the door. I am the access point to all who come in and do good. Now, he does say those who don't come through the door, so that means that there are other access points to the house. There are other access point to the sheep, so they can crawl over the fence. They can crawl through a hole in the fence. You see that the sheep were in a pen, and if there's anything to the pen that has done damage to the security of that sheep pen, then somebody has access to them now. But Jesus says, I am the door. I'm the one that keeps out the strangers, the danger, the people, the robbers that come to do damage. He says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. So he's not coming to lock you in to keep you away from everything else. In fact, he says, I give you access to all things that are good. We think sometimes when we come to Jesus that we throw away every bit of happiness we have and we're just going to live a life of sadness and whatever else. But he actually is saying that if you come in and out by me, you'll first be saved. There'll be no danger. There'll be no access to people who are trying to do damage to you. But you can also go in and out and find pasture. The sheep is not confined to the pasture full time. The the shepherd here is going to bring them in and out of the sheepfold, depending upon the time of the day, to go find nourishment, to go find grass to eat, to go find water to drink. He's given them full access as the door to go find the things that are nourishing, that are fulfilling to them. Now, John 10:10 is one of those famous verses. He said, opposed to the door, you're going to have the thief, and that thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. So the thief here is referring to the devil, to Satan, of course. And so as opposed to the person who comes to bring you that security and give you access to the pastures that you need, here comes the thief whose only job is to steal, kill, and destroy. So what does that mean for us as Bible readers in 2026? Are we sheep? Not literally, we're not sheep. We don't have a lot of people who are in the shepherding business or the sheep business as they did back in this day. But we still have a thief whose job is to steal, kill, and destroy. And not only is he there to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus says, I came opposing that to give you life and to have it more abundantly. So what does it mean when you compare steal, kill, and destroy to abundant life? When you're saved, yes, we are looking forward to a time where eternity is, right? We're looking for a place that we refer to as heaven, and really more practicality, we're looking forward to that new heaven and new earth, as the old heaven and the old earth will be destroyed. And we're going to be referred to, or we're going to be living in that new Eden, that new creation, which creation was built for that in Genesis 1. It was tainted forever by sin, and access was taken away from Adam and Eve. Now, Jesus says, I've come to give you life and to have it more abundantly. He's the opposite of death. Remember when Adam and Eve sinned, the curse of death fell upon them, so they were taken away from the access to life. They were taken away from the access of beauty, and were remanded to live in a life of death from then on. Jesus is going to come back one day and restore that life eternally with him. We're not just going to go off and spend eternity on the clouds. We're not going to spend eternity just whatever you had a picture of. I think we need to take a serious look at what eternity is going to look like. We're going to be returned to that garden, that Eden, where we work, we worship, we serve, we continue to do those things that God created. But let's go back and talk a little bit about that life and have it more abundantly. So when you are converted, when you are saved, when you are trying to use all the nomenclature, all the churchy terms, when you believe and you give your life over to Jesus, the initial sense is, I have secured my place in eternity where I'm going to have life forever. And some people, that's all they think about. They said, okay, I have punched my card. I have access to heaven where I'm going to live forever. And that's true, but only partly true. So you got to look at if he's giving you life and he's giving you an abundant life, it's not just to survive. He's not just saying hang on for the next 20, 30, 40 years, whatever time frame you have left, and keep looking to that future place where we spend eternal life in heaven. No, he's saying, I'm giving you life, and I'm giving you it now as well. He's giving you an abundant life. And that does not look like a happy life, because happy is based on happenings, which are your circumstances. So happiness comes and goes. But that abundant life is based upon a heart full of joy. And that joy is not an emotion that somebody can give or take away. It is a stance that you have taken in your life. If you look at all of history, of all the people that have been martyred for the cause of Christ, if you look at all the sufferings of people that went through or killed, even recently, you couldn't say that they were happy when they were burned at the stake, or when they were boiled alive, or when they were crucified. You can't say that Christ was happy on the cross. It would be ignorant, really, to say that. You can't say when people were hung, when people were burned, when people were massacred, that made them happy. But it did complete them in their joy to serve Christ. Paul wrote, "For me to live is Christ and die is gain." He said, man, if I live now, that's great. But if I die, that's great too. And so that's that sense of abundant life. And it doesn't mean that every second's going to be happy, because you're going to go through ups and downs. We're on earth. We're in an earthly tabernacle. Our body is decaying. There's days that my body is aching. There's days that I get sick. There's days that people that I love are going through hard times. But that's not about joy. That has nothing actually to do with joy. My joy is set when I gain that life, that abundant life from Christ. But that thief is trying to come and steal. Now, the thief only has access to you when when security's down. So, like, if someone were to try to come into a school building and do great harm, they can only come in the front door and barge through the front door, or they can find the door that's been left open or a window that's been left open, or get somebody to let them in. And that's the sense that Jesus is saying here, that the thief is coming to steal, kill, and destroy, but he has only access if you let him. If you watch that movie you're not supposed to watch, if you listen to that, whatever it is, if you give him access to that, then his only course of action is to come in and steal, kill, and destroy your abundant life. And so he says, as the door, he is there to protect his sheep. He's there to secure them. But the thief is coming to do the opposite. He's coming to steal, kill, and destroy. Now, next he says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand is not a shepherd. He who does not own the sheep sees the wolves coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own sheep, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father. There was a great division among the Jews because of these words. Many said, he is a demon, or is insane. Why listen to him? Others said, these are not the words of one who is oppressed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? So what is he talking about here? He says, I am the good shepherd. Now, that word good, I used my tools and I looked up, is the word kalos in Greek. And that word means complete, it means beautiful, it means better, what is right, commendable, those types of adjectives to talk about when we say good. So again, the English language is a little limited when it comes to our adjectives. We say good, and it can be talking about that pizza was good, or that child was good today, and it's the same word. When he says good shepherd, I can't help but go and think about, well, what is the anti of that? So what is he's already compared himself, a shepherd, to a thief and a robber. He's called himself a door, and he's compared him to that. So what is he compared to a good shepherd? Is he comparing it to a good shepherd, a bad shepherd, or what? And I think really what he's talking to is that good shepherd is the cut above. It is the complete one. It is the best. Dabo Sweeney says best is the standard. So that same kind of mindset where there's a good, better, best. There's a lot of times where we have to, and I tell this to students all the time, when you have to choose between, it's very easy. Let me back up. It's easy at times when you have to choose between good and evil. Those are very obvious choices. Now, sometimes we choose the wrong road. Sometimes the allure of the bad road looks like what we knew, but we know when we're choosing between good and evil, we know which one that we should choose. What he's saying here is not between good and the bad. He's actually saying good and the best, or good and not so good. When you're having to choose between better and best, it's difficult because they're not so obvious. There are good teachers. There are teachers that do their job. And then there's another level where they're a cut above. They go the extra. And it's not because they just do, it's because that's who they are. I talked a little bit about last week about what are you defined by what you do or what you are. And a lot of people can be busy. This shepherd that he's talking about, this good shepherd, this kalos, is not because he does things, it's because of who he is. He's saying, first of all, that the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. There's going to be an opposing here to the hired hand. So the good shepherd is going to be the one that if trouble comes up, if there's a thief, a robber, if there's a wolf, if there's some kind of danger to the sheep, that the shepherd is going to step in and say, nope, not on my watch. And at the risk of his own self, even if it cost his life or cost damage to him, he's going to step in because the sheep are important to him. Now, that hired hand is going to watch the sheep. That hired hand is there to do a job. He's going to guide the sheep in the right way, but he doesn't have the same investment as the shepherd does. The shepherd is the one that watched those sheep be born. That shepherd is the one who knows this is my livelihood and I have to do whatever it takes to protect them. But that hired hand says, you know what? There's a wolf there. There's danger. I'm just going to run away myself because I don't want to get hurt. There's nothing wrong with me trying to self-persevere and make sure that nothing happens to me. He says in verse 13, he flees because he is a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. Jesus, on the other hand, says, I am the good shepherd. Remember, too, and I haven't said this week, when he says I am, he is referring back to that time where Moses was on Mount Sinai, and he asked God, who shall I say sends me? And you say, you tell them I am that I am. Well, every time he says I am, that would be a reference to that same point. He says, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know, and I know the Father. I lay down my life for the sheep. Now they have no idea that he is about to physically lay his life and be the sacrifice for the sheep. He's literally he's heading toward the cross, and we're on the other side. We're on this side of the cross. They're on the other side of the cross, where they have no idea about what he's about to go through. They just think he's still talking to them in a figurative language to try to teach them something. He says that I lay down my life that I may take it up again. So he is telling them that he is going to lay down his life. He's physically going to lay down his life. When you go back to Abraham and Isaac in Genesis, Isaac laid down on the sacrifice so that Abraham could sacrifice him. And of course, that was a type of Christology there where Christ was going to eventually lay down his life for everyone. He says, I lay down my life, and I have the power to take it up again. So he had the power to die, to give himself up, but he also had the power to resurrect himself even in the middle of that death. He says, I have the authority. He says, I have the ability, and then I have the authority. He has the authority to lay it down and to take it up again. And he's received this from the Father. This points to Matthew 28 when he's about to ascend, and he gives what we refer to as the Great Commission. He says, all authority is given to me. The Father has given him the authority or the right or just the ability, because he is who he is, to lay his life down and then to take it up again. He's the only one that has ever had this authority. Now, this is going to end, this little section is going to end with a division. You're going to have people that don't understand, that think he's crazy, that think he has a demon, he's insane. And then you're going to have an opposing group who said, these are not the words of somebody who's possessed by a demon. And then they're going to ask the obvious question, oh, somebody has a demon? Can he heal the blind? We already saw that. We saw that last time. Can it happen again? And it's just very important as we have all the, again, we have all the references on this side. The reference back to Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me by the still waters. He leads me to green pastures. And then you have that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, you are with me. So you have the sheep, this image of the sheep walking through a dangerous time, but yet that good shepherd with his shepherd's crook, he's there to guide them, or he's there to guide them toward where they're supposed to be, and he's also there to pull them away from where they're not supposed to be. That's what Jesus is for us. He is that good shepherd. All right, so we're going to stop there this week and pick up next time in verse 22 and finish chapter 10. Let me pray for us, and then we will see you next time. God, thank you for this day and all you've done for us. Guide us and direct us, I pray, in all things. And I thank you for your word. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.